Welcome to episode 4.10 of the Living to Thrive with Cancer podcast. In today's episode, I am talking with Brenda Staat-Tomlinson. Brenda is a passionate holistic healer dedicated to guiding individuals on their profound journeys of self-discovery, healing personal growth, and the gentle embrace of life's inevitable transitions, including grief. Her mission is to empower you to awaken your innate wisdom, heal your mind, nourish your body, and nurture your soul, even in the face of life's most profound challenges. Now, if you are a new listener, I want to welcome you to the podcast. I'm Catherine White, a cancer thriver, using my stories and experience with stage 4 colon cancer to guide you through your walk with cancer. As a holistic cancer coach, I want to help support you through creating a health-building lifestyle, managing your stress, and helping you to navigate the day in and day out stuff that comes up when you have cancer. If you find what you learned here today with myself and Brenda to be helpful, please share it with other people you know that could benefit from this episode. Sharing helps me to support more people living with cancer and to help them move from survivor to thriver. And so you can go ahead and subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening, follow it on YouTube, and I would love for you to head to the show notes, get your name on my weekly email list so you can follow my path to thriving with cancer and how I am using what I have learned to support you in your walk towards your goal of becoming a cancer thriver too. And when you sign up, you'll get a free download gift that I will send to you, and you will get to also see Brenda's information in the show notes so that you can connect with her. So welcome, Brenda. I am super, super excited to have you here today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for inviting me to come and be a guest. This is a new spot for me. So thank you very much for the invitation.
It's amazing. I love this because you and I actually connected on your podcast, which we'll talk about in a minute. You had me as a guest on your podcast, and we talked about this energy and how it just felt like so good, so right to have the conversation. So I knew that you needed to be here when you were ready to just share your insights and expertise with my listeners who are people who are living with cancer. So let's get started. What I'd love for you to do is actually to give us a little bit of insight into who you are and how you came to be a holistic healer, particularly around grief.
Sure. So I'd probably start by saying I was unaware for the first 48 years of my life. Unaware, living the conditioned life, the program life, you go to school, go to college, you get married, have kids, go to job. And I was living that life, but I was surviving and I was not thriving. Mm-hmm. And what led me into the holistic healing was literally my teenager's in my home, and an argument one night in the fall, another door slam, another argument. And I was just like, I can no longer live like this. I can't live like this. Something has to change. And I knew enough at the time that only I could change myself. I couldn't change my teenager that I was fighting with, couldn't change the other teenagers in my home. I could only change me. So I started seeking. And I knew that talk therapy wasn't going to work for me because I had been there, done that. And this time it was bigger. It was a bigger deal. And I couldn't do what I had done before. So I went seeking and ended up finding some alternative healing methods in energy work, different things like that I picked up on. And as I started healing myself, I realized I have the gifts and the abilities and the skill set that I can actually help others do the same thing. And so as I was healing myself, my relationship with my teenager, my ex-husband, my parents, like all the things, I started helping clients with the same way that I was healing myself. I started working with clients and helping them heal the things that were in their life that they couldn't seem to, I want to say, get over, get past, unravel, couldn't get through, right? So I started, that's That's the short version.
It's beautiful though. And I was just making a note, like that concept of heal yourself first,
Mm,
that you kind of have to do the work on yourself before you can gift that work to other people. Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Another thing too is I had a lot of parents come to me to help them with their child. So their child was behaving, acting out in school, ADHD, just a lot ODD, a lot of different things. And as I was working with their child, I would say to all the parents, now I've been working with him for a while or her for a while. It would be really good to have some sessions for yourself
Mm.
because your child is changing. Your child is healing. And if you're playing the same game and reacting in the same pattern, how is that helping them? So, yes. So, yes, we want to help our children live the best life ever. We want them to thrive, but we also have to be willing to do the work and change so that as they are healing and as they are being able to stop in that nanosecond and make a different choice than arguing, you need to be able to do that same thing. So, it is so important that we do begin the healing work on ourselves
Yeah.
always.
I love this. In our house, with my walk with cancer, um, I have done the inner healing work to help my body and my mind and my spirit to heal. But it's been interesting to watch the ripple effect in the
Yes.
house and how, my husband, as the caregiver, has been processing his trauma around this, his grief. I just did an episode of an on having feeling grief, like good grief, that
Mm,
moment where grief comes through and it just feel like you feel so joyful and then so sad and then so joyful, and it's this roller coaster of emotion. And then we're seeing that sort of transfer into our children also. But yeah, the healing has to start with the person, I guess,
yes.
that yeah, it may not
Yes.
even realize they need the healing.
Right. Right. And then, too, as you're healing and changing, there needs to be a lot of grace for those in your family around you because they're on their own path, they're on their own journey. And I kind of coin it as you're changing the game of how you've played because now you're doing it differently because you're not that nanosecond you have the choice, or you're not triggered, or you're not letting the old wounds and the old stories rule play the game for you. So there needs to be a lot of grace and compassion because your family members, especially if they're not doing healing, they need time to figure out, well, the game's changed. Mom's not acting the same. Oh, what am I supposed to do now? Right. And so there has to be an allowance for that process. And that's where that grace and compassion needs to be part of that process in order to allow them, your family, your loved ones, to work it through and on their journey in their time.
Mm.
It's hard.
It's a very
It's
complex
necessary.
process.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, necessary, like for the person who is trying to do the work, or as a guide for, in your case, when you were working with teenagers, to support them in doing the work. Like there's this, I think, like this responsibility to be graceful and kind
Yeah.
and compassionate, because not everybody's on the same path,
Right.
and it
And
can
that could
take
be your first awareness, right? Like that could be the first awareness of someone who's stepping into a healing journey is, oh, oh, we're all on different paths. Oh, and they may not ever get at the point I'm at right now. And so it's this is what I had to do with my teenager is, okay, how do I don't like the choices. I don't like the behavior. You're my son, my child. I love you. How do I love you well and accept you as you are when I
Mm.
don't love and I don't want to accept these behaviors? Like it is really it's like walking on a tightrope, and that's this balance. And how do I do that? Like, how do I love you well and accept you where you are when I know there could be so much more? And I guess too, I'm gapping, but when I can also see the potential in you, I can see all that you can do. I can see all that's for you and you can't. Like yeah, because in relationships like this, we love them and you're a family unit. You've chosen to be here together. And how do you let love win? That's kind of been the question that has come to me in a specific situation in the past few months. Love wins. Okay. All right. So I know the answer. So how do I get there? So how do I work through all that's coming up for me around it? And how do I just get to this love wins? Like,
Wow.
that's doing the inner work, right?
That is huge. How do we let love win?
Yeah.
And that's so hard, I think, for the people who are the observers of the healing process to understand that the healing, I think, comes from a place of love, self-love, but also love for the family. And I know I have some caregivers in my practice that get frustrated because they can see what the steps are of what they want for their person from so much love of wanting them to be well, but the person has to be ready to do the work.
Yes.
And so in sometimes in my case of my clients, the patient is watching the caregiver and the caregiver is trying to do the work. And then in other cases, it's the patient who's trying to do the work and the caregiver is trying to stay caught up. But there's just so much around life in general, right?
Yes.
And throw exceptional circumstances in, and it just is that much more of a challenging situation, I think.
Totally agree.
But lead from love.
Yes. And there's a lot of work that you've got to do to get to that place. The theme of for me, the theme of judgment, the theme of what will people think, the theme of how does this look, like that was so ingrained. Generations of that ingrained in my DNA. And it's simply working through it every time it comes up. So in this particular instance, those were the exact thoughts that came up. Like, how do I handle this? Like, if this is true, the judgment, what's the world going to say? The ruled is cruel, just different things. And all of a sudden it was like, my spirit team was right on top of me and love wins. All right. That's just the place that's just the place that I need to get to. And interestingly enough, I thought that I would have to work through all those lines of judgment that came up and all that stuff that was within me, that was the negative energy that was within me that was bringing that up, that I'd have to work through that. And I kind of was like begrudgingly like, oh, I just got a whole nother list of stuff to work through and, energetically clear. And it was within a few days, it's like, I don't have to work through any of that. Because that one message of love wins took everything that I felt and was brewing within me and gone. It was amazing. It was amazing. I love it. It doesn't always happen that way, but I love it when it does.
Yeah. And so cleansing, right? And really
Yes.
like so simple at its root. Like love wins when you can love yourself enough to want to make a change, enough to, again, in the case of my clients, to take care of themselves, to change how they eat, to reframe how they think. And I know I've listened to a number of your episodes, and so many of the people that come to your podcast, so like let's switch tack here and talk about that. The Mind, Body, Soul Mastery podcast really share powerful stories of healing. Really, really powerful and beautiful stories. And so obviously to come to the podcast, they feel safe and they feel ready to share the work that they've been doing. So can you tell us a little bit more about your podcast? Because I really do love it. And I hope that the people that are listening to this podcast will listen to yours, just because there's such a variety of people coming to the table, so many different experiences and how they have moved through that. So why did you even start the podcast?
Well, so mind, body, soul healing has been a part of the work that I do since I started my business 5 years ago. And within the last year, mind, body, soul, I don't know. I needed to do something different. I was missing deep and meaningful conversations. I love, yeah. So hence the podcast was launched, Mind, Body, Soul Mastery. And as you know, being a guest, I struggled with that word mastery because it's like, I'm nowhere near a master whatsoever.
Mhm.
But as I sat with it and as my guides, my team sat with it, it became very clear. My belief is that mind, body, soul mastery is what every human here on earth, that is what we are here to look at, to delve into, and to learn to have the three work together. Because it's when the three work together, when we can work, when it can work in alignment and partnership, when the mind and the body is not only just the complex systems that it runs. Our body is a system, right? Automatic system, our digestion, our breathing, our heartbeat, like there's that part of it. But our body is also the place where intuition lies. Our body is the place where we feel emotions. And that is what makes our souls human, is this feeling, these experiences and the feelings that we have. And so when we can align the mind and remove the lies and the mistruths, the misinformation, the lies that we believe that are not true, we can align our body to open up our intuition, to allow us to choose to allow our bodies to feel every emotion instead of stuffing and denying. And then we can lean in and tune in to what is our soul? What is our soul? What is its purpose? What are we here for? Because it's not just to make money. It's not just to live that programmed life of school, college, the white picket fence, 2 dogs, 4 kids, that's not, we're here for more than that. And every single one of us has a purpose. My purpose, I scoffed at. That's a story in and of itself. But my purpose is really all around loving ourselves, loving myself, loving this vessel that I chose, even when I'm not happy with it, learning to really love this vessel that I chose, this body that I'm here in, and to follow my body's nudges. What is my body telling me to do? Where is my body nudging me? Oh, I shouldn't eat that food because it tickles the back of my throat. Okay, got it. Oh, oh, so-and-so comes to mind. I just need to reach out to her today and just check in and just say, hey, you came to mind. Following the body's nudges, right? That's my intuition, the feelings, even the stuff that comes up. I mentioned before, like those threads of judgment or what will people think? Leaning into, okay, why has this got such a hold on me?
Yes.
Where's this coming from? And allowing my body, because my physical body holds the score. I've read the Body Holds the Score.
Such
Fabulous
a good book. Oh my gosh.
Such a good book.
Highly recommend.
Yes. And the many of the aches and the pains and the dis-ease that I have can all be rooted in the emotional toll that I was not able to process and let go of. And so that is really the crux of my work too, this really getting ourselves to release the negative energy that our body's holding in order so that we can heal thyself. So it becomes this matter of, do I have to know thyself to heal thyself, or do I have to heal thyself to know thyself? Like, to me, they go both ways. But it's when we lean in to do the work, when we lean in to do the inner work, and those things that are coming up and finding the threads and looking back, and then the introspection and self-reflection of, is this true? Is this true of me? Is this for me? Because a lot of things of what I'm holding, what my body's been holding, and I'd say this for everyone, a lot of it isn't true. And we couldn't process it. We couldn't handle it in the moment. And our bodies held on to that. And when we can get to this place of leaning into, look at those things, truly see them, acknowledge them. And it really is simple as acknowledge, oh, I know that time when I was 6 years old. I remember that. I remember how she felt. Thanks for letting me see it. I acknowledge it. That happened. It hurt. And now thank you for letting it go. It is really as simple as that, but it is over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Every time it comes up, right? And so this is, and then, yeah. So mind, body, soul, we were talking about my podcast, mind, body, soul mastery is all of that together. Like it's all that I just talked about and living in alignment. Because when we can get the three working together to live in alignment, that's where I believe we really begin to thrive in this life.
Yes.
And it's also where that point of where possibilities and opportunities to curate what we want, which might not have ever been able to see, but now we can. That's when that all begins to open up and when it's all possible.
Wow. That is hugely profound and yet so simple, really. Like it's such a big thought, and yet it's just so simple. And if I can add, I think it is the opportunity that we have when we start to acknowledge 6-year-old me and why was I feeling that way as a child and how is that impacting me now? But the next piece is how can I heal that wound so that I can break the cycle in my family, in the world? Like, how can we break that cycle by stepping out of what we were conditioned to believe? I have to tell you this story because it's the cutest thing and so relevant. I was at the grocery store the other day and there was this lovely lady, probably in her 70s, and she had the cutest little hat on. And I was just like, hey, I just really love your hat. It's so cute. And she's like, well, thank you. I got it on Temu. She was very proud of herself. And she said, but I have to tell you, I would never have gone out dressed like this before. Like she was super casual. Like I didn't think anything of it. But she said, oh, my mother would be beside herself if she saw me dressed like this at the grocery store. And then she went on to talk about her experience of being a child and a young woman and becoming a mother and how her mother was like, no, we don't go out looking like that. We must be dressed up. We always have to be on our game. And it just felt like what you were saying is like, how do you love yourself when you've been conditioned to behave the way somebody else wants you to behave? And that's the stuff I think, and you are certainly welcome to disagree, but I think that's the stuff that's making us ill, is we're holding on to the stories. The body keeps the score. On a cellular level, we're not allowing that free flow of energy, which allows us to have free flow of thoughts, that allows us to listen to the sensations, the intuition that lets us move forward.
I 100% agree. 100% agree. And the key is really learning to tune into those body's nudges, the subtle things, right? And my mind wants me to go. So I know for me that that decade or so since the time that my husband left, I was single mom raising my kids and I was just surviving. There was no thriving. And a lot of it was because I wasn't living how I meant to live. I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing, going to the 9 to the 5. Yes, I have a day job that I'm really good at, but it doesn't fill my soul. And so I had to follow the body's nudges to do that thing or add into my life what fills my soul. Now adding the podcast, having deep and meaningful conversations with people who have gone through the messy and challenging, because there's everything in life can be messy and challenging. And some people just have messy and challenging over and over and over again. And so part of the podcast of bringing that to life was, number one, let's talk about the messy and challenging. Let's stop pretending it doesn't exist. Let's start talking about grief. I want to normalize grief. I want to embrace grief because it impacts us, and we are We're just not even conscious of how much it's impacting us. And so what I've discovered for myself is that when I talk about it and share about it, there's a little less burden. There's a little less weight. I started realizing and recognizing, oh, I'm not alone. There are other people who feel like me. So sometimes when we keep it to ourselves and we don't share, we think, oh, it's just me. Look at everyone else is having this perfect, beautiful life. Look at that family. They look great together. You know what? They're not 24/7. We don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And if I'm not sharing how I'm feeling or share what I like to say, share my shit, because that gets it out, people don't realize I'm not alone. There are other people who feel this way. And sharing is a part of healing, talking about it, getting it out, especially you have to find safe people, obviously. But when you do, it's a path of healing that is very underutilized and unrecognized in many ways, because who likes to ugly cry? But sometimes that's what's needed to happen when you're sharing to get it out. And that's its own sort of release. So for me, that podcast became that place of we can talk about the messy and challenging, but we're also talking about, so what did they do? Because every one of my guests didn't sit in the messy and challenging. They, like me, just like I did, they went seeking. They found the things, they found tools, they found coaches, they found mentors, they found ways that helped them heal and move through their messy and challenging, empowering themselves, finding their voice. Finding their strength, finding their resilience, where they may not have had any of that before. And to me, that is hope and inspiring. So right now, my podcast is fun. It fills my soul every conversation I have, because I'm talking with people who have done it, who've walked it, just like I have. And that creates this, to me, it's just this soul connection that I can't even begin to explain.
So beautiful. That is so beautiful. And I think that it's an invitation for people to not feel shame around their feelings and around their stories. And in my work, we talk about exceptional healing patients. And if you read Radical Remission or Radical Hope, they talk about the people who heal are the people who there are certain qualities. And one of them is doing the inner work and releasing the shame, releasing those stories of the lady who's embarrassed to be out at the grocery store, not dressed like her mother wanted her to be. There's so much shame around, not following what we're supposed to be doing. Or in my case, with my clients, it's shame around getting ill and the shame of what didn't I do? But it's such an opportunity when we have these conversations to say it's not about what you didn't do. It's about what you can do moving forward from here.
Yes.
Healing from a place of love.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Absolutely. I really do hope people will go and listen to your podcast, because there are some exceptional healing people in your healing space. So, that gives me goosebumps. So I did say, that we've referenced grief a few times, and I just wondered about, the power of grief. Like, we've sort of touched on it, but how it can hold onto us. And like, do you have a particular way or that you talk about with people or even for yourself, like how you move that grief through and out?
Yes. And I'm going to say too, I just want to caveat by saying my perspective of grief is very unique, simply because of the journey that I'm on and the people that are in my world, the healers and the channelers and the mediums that are in my world really helped me. I'm going to refer back to that teenager that I talked about earlier in my story, that teenager, the door slam and another argument. And it was like a war zone in my home. And that's the child who put me on the healing journey. And that is also the child who 2 years ago, I got the call that he had died from cocaine laced fentanyl. So his relapse had cost him his life. And I never expected that. I knew he was an addict. I mean, we all did. And we all knew that his dad and stepmom, myself, like we all knew that we couldn't change him until he was ready to change, right? So again, it goes back to that. I don't like your choices and behaviors, but I love you. So how do I love you and stay in relationship with you when these are the choices and the things that you're doing? It was hard. It was hard times. And he and I were on a path of rebuilding a bridge, like rebuilding this relationship because, there's just a lot in there.
Yeah.
And so to get that call was number one, shocking. And because of the world that I'm in, the people that are around me, I had a friend reach out who was able to connect with his source energy and receive a channeled message of my questions that he answered and everything. And so all of us, it was that moment in listening to her recording and hearing his humor come through, the things that he would said that only I would get and understand. It was so clear to me that it was him. There was no doubt in my mind. I understood his soul's purpose. I understood what he came to do on this earth. And it was to feel that high again, to feel that high vibration of eternity, soul, coming from heaven, whatever it is you call it. He came to chase that. I didn't know that. Obviously, I didn't know that. But I understood it when the message came down. And it became very clear to me. I came to chase the high. I didn't know I didn't have to do it through drugs. There were other ways I see now, but that's what I chose. And so it became very clear to me, like his human experience ended. He died. His physical body died. His human experience ended, but his soul continues. And that is where I have my heart. That is what I focus on, is that his soul is now free to come have another human experience, if that's what you believe, or his soul is in eternity in heaven forever, if that's what you believe. What I've come to understand and accept in my spiritual journey and my healing journey is what may be true for me may not be true for you, right? And so my dad just passed away a couple of weeks ago, and my family is of the belief of heaven and hell and one life to live. And so I have to honor that. And so now we refer to my dad in heaven. Yep. I see it differently. I see my son and his soul and my dad's energy flying around together. They come talk to me. They visit me. So that is how I have been able to, what I call, quantum shift my grief. I didn't sit in the suffering. I didn't sit in what I've lost, because I knew what he came for. I knew that what he came to do, it ended. His experience ended. And now I miss him. My grief is more missing him. My grief is more getting the teary-eyed when the thoughts come, or sometimes, and it hits me at different times. Like I will be with all my, the rest of my family and my other living children, and we'll watch them muck around and laugh and joke. And then I will get teary-eyed and was like, God, Ian would be right in there with them if he was here today. Like that's how grief hits me now. It's in missing those moments that, oh, he'd be right there too, but he's not. So but I allow that feeling to come. I allow myself to sit in those tears in that moment. And this is the other thing too, I wish that all grievers could accept, is that there can be joy and grief at the same time. When
Yes.
I'm sitting and watching my children muck around and joke and, have fun together and laugh, that is joy to me. And that Ian's not part of it, there's the grief for me. It happens at the same time. And it
Yes.
is okay. And I allow it to be. And that's how I've helped myself to move with my grief, to carry my grief. It always runs as a background in the back of my programming. It's always there.
Mm. Mm. We call that good grief at
Yeah.
our house. It's that moment of that mixture of joy and sorrow at the same time. Or it's even, I did an episode on it around the idea of almost mourning what you are doing right now that you might not have had.
Yes.
It's like, oh, if things had gone differently, this wouldn't be happening right now. And so I'm really happy that it's happening right now, but I'm grieving the moment that I thought that maybe I would never have this. Like it's a
Mhm.
really interesting concept of seeing where you are, like watching and enjoying your children and knowing that there's a piece that's not there, but it is.
Right. Right. And in his freedom as a soul, I do believe he's around. He's always accessible. He's right. He's with me. He sees it too. And that in itself brings its own level of comfort, in that I don't feel that he's missing out.
Mm,
I'm more, man, now you and my dad are together. And now you all know. Like, you see the whole thing. It's all been revealed. You now know. I really want to be there with you, because
yeah,
I want to be experiencing that and be in that place. So again, a very unique perspective of grief, simply because of the experiences that I've had.
yeah,
Yet anyone and everyone can get to that unique perspective themselves too, if they choose it.
right. And it is a unique path for everyone. Pink has a song, I think that was for her dad about, where she sings, is there a bar up there where you have a favorite chair? Do you
Yeah.
sit around and talk about the weather? And I lost my brother in early 2020. He chose to end his walk on the earth. And have really been moving through that grieving process. So my own grief around my own health, and then the grief around him,
Yeah.
and just really learning that there are opportunities, and this won't resonate with everyone, and that's okay. Like, I've gone through Reiki healing with my Reiki masters, outstanding, and have had conversations
Mm-hmm.
with my brother and been able to have those experiences that really are very healing. And that's not, as they said, going to resonate for everyone, because it's just such a unique process.
Yes.
But I
Yes.
do think, that some people believe in signs. Like,
Right.
my brother
Yes.
is a baby seal. When I see a baby seal for a long convoluted story, I know that he is present,
Yes.
and that
Yes.
can bring me joy in that loss.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just want to add a little bit more about grief, and what I've
Mm.
learned is that, yes, I have experienced grief as the loss of a child. And it was in after losing him, and in that process of grieving, mourning, I realized this is a familiar feeling. I felt this way a lot, but I didn't lose anyone so close to me before. And as I just sat with it, and I began to realize, you know what? For me, a lot of the grief and the sadness that was familiar to me was around unmet expectations that I was never able to reconcile. And so grief is
Mm.
more than the loss of someone. And I think this is what we also fail to talk about enough. It can be the loss of an illusion. My marriage ended. My partner chose to walk away. There was a lot of grief, not over him, but over the loss of the illusion.
Mm,
I expected to be married for life. I expected that partnership for life, and that didn't happen. So there's been a lot of grief around this loss of the illusion around the marriage. If you have a career that you got fired from, or whatever, like grief is around that. If you had hopes of being an NFL player and you busted your knee in high school, those dreams are gone.
yeah.
That could be grief, right?
Yeah.
So loss of property, bankruptcy, like grief can hit us over so much. And again, it's this emotional part of being human. If we don't allow ourselves to accept it, acknowledge it, feel it, right?
Mhm.
Our body holds on to it. And
Mhm.
we then just can be under this veil of grief and sadness, more as a heavy weight, heavy blanket all the time. And it makes it harder to see those glimmers of joy and sadness at seeing those good things in life. So
Yeah.
grief is just it's it's just extremely complex, and it's bigger than what we realize and what we notice.
Yes. I really love that you added that piece because there is grief and again the people that are listening to this podcast, grief around getting ill, grief around
Absolutely.
the changes to the body, grief around you know what for myself, like what I've done to my family, what my loved
Yes.
ones have gone through. But on the flip side of it, and this has been my work, is taking that grief and saying, but what good has come from this?
Yes.
And I have a
Yes.
much more beautiful relationship with my sons because we can have honest conversations, and my husband and I are super close. And I don't grieve not having a full career as a teacher because it led me to find something else that brings me so much joy. So I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like grief can be around losing a person, but it can also be around lost expectations, lost dreams, lost hopes. But then what are you going to do with that? Once you can
Right.
recognize it, what are you going to do with that? Because really, there's
Right.
only two choices. You sit in it or you find a way to move through it.
100%.
A third choice
100%.
and get beyond it, right?
Yes.
Acknowledge, do the work, and then move
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that very personal share. You know, we don't always want to share those deeper things because we feel like it might embarrass people or make them uncomfortable or it's too personal. But it's what you were talking about with your podcast. Like when you can say the things that might make other people uncomfortable, when we can stop living the narrative that we've been conditioned to walk and
Right.
talk,
Right.
that's where the healing starts.
Yes.
So beautiful. So, so beautiful. So can you just share, like, do you work privately with people or is your message solely delivered through your podcast? How can people find you?
The podcast is a great place to start, just to hear me and to hear the stories. You can find me I have a website, brendastaat-Tomlinson.com, and I do work one-on-one. Right now, my work is only one-on-one with clients simply because it's um, personal. And my goal and intention is to help you lean in to discover your truth, to
Mm.
discover to heal and discover your truth and what's true for you. And let's unwind and unravel the stories and the things that are holding you back or that's contributing to not getting whatever it is. Right.
Yeah.
So it's really going within to find what is true for you. Where's the healing? What do we need? So it's very
Mhm.
personal and curated.
Beautiful. Yeah, not prescribed. It's a very individualized process, which healing is a very individualized process.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I will make sure to put your information to your website and to your podcast in the show notes so that people
Great.
can find you. Because I think, this is the gift of having this voice on a podcast, is be able to share other people and what they can bring, because we can have multiple healing modalities in our life. and multiple healers in our lives to support us as we move through whatever our things are.
Absolutely. And it's seeking the one that's right for you in that moment.
Yes.
I mean, I've hired dozens of healers in my 5 years, and there's only a few that I've gone back to time and time again. And then, but everyone, the teacher comes, the mentor comes when the student is ready, or when, the person is ready. And so again, it's that following your body. Who's calling you, who's drawing you, and, following that. And again,
and listening. Yeah.
Yes. And as we follow, who we're drawn to are different things. Like that's that mind, body, soul mastery, that alignment that I'm talking about. When we get the nudge and we follow on that action, that helps bring that alignment into being.
Yeah. One of the, no, I don't want to say best, one of the most profound healers, I think, other than like my Reiki master that I still see, person who helped me the most initially, I think, was a coach that I didn't even know that coaching was a thing. And then I met this girl, and she ended up, I did 2 rounds of coaching with her. But what I want to say about her is, like, she challenged me. She didn't just let me wallow in my stories and tell them over and over, which is what coaching is about, right? We don't just sit and say, tell me all about that all over again.
Right.
She would challenge me, like, to the point where I was in tears a few times, not because I was sad for what I was saying, but because she was just like, no, I'm not accepting that answer. Like, try again. Let's do this again. And just like forced me in a very loving and safe container to acknowledge, oh, that's where that's coming from. And once it was like, oh, that's where that's coming from, like bursting open.
Yes.
And just being able to, okay, now we can move forward. So you're right. It is like the mentor will come to the student, to the client, to the human in a way when they are ready. And it might not feel like the right person right away, but sometimes even that little edginess is exactly what you need, instead of the person who's going to like pat your back and say, you're going to be just fine. It's the person like, no, actually, let's go. Let's do this.
Healing isn't easy.
No.
It isn't easy. This work isn't easy. And if you're looking for easy, then you probably don't want to start the journey. If you're not willing to lean into the uncomfortable, to find your truths, to find your soul's purpose, then don't go seeking it. I mean, and yet I say that, and yet I know for me, it has been the best thing I've ever done. And I am so grateful and so thankful, even as the things come up. Like I just said, I've lost I just lost my dad. There's still some things that I've got to work through in that relationship. Now that he's not here, I still have to work through that relationship. There's still some things that because it's for me. It's not, my healing and working on the relationship was not for this physical thing between him and I. It's working on this relationship and healing the things that I'm still holding on to because it's for me. It helps me to live my fullest expression and live that life where I am thriving.
Oh, beautiful. That leads me so beautifully into the last question I wanted to ask you. Like, what does living to thrive mean to you?
For me, it is all that I've been talking about. This mind, body, soul mastery. It's this living in alignment. So thriving to me is recognizing the lies, acknowledging those areas that, I still have to do some work there, and then choosing to lean into and do that inner work, allow my body to reveal what it's holding, allow myself to feel my emotions, allow myself to follow my nudges, even when I don't want to, even when I'm tired and I don't want to, but I want to thrive. And I want this vessel that I've chosen to be the healthiest that it can be. So that does mean, I think you probably talk about this with your clients, doing and changing some things that you don't really want to, but it's for you, it's better for you. And then 2, always tuning in with my soul. And is this Is this for me? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And allowing my soul to guide and allowing my spirit team to guide me. And I have to be willing to follow what comes, even if it's uncomfortable. So to me, that's thriving. I live a very quiet life, very slow, probably not so much engaged with the outside world other than an online world. And I love it. I love it. And I'm thriving. My soul is happy. My human is content.
Mm.
And to me, that's thriving, because that's vastly different than the person, for 4 decades that tried to conform with all these expectations and what the world expected of me. And I was miserable.
Mm.
So
Beautiful.
that's how I'd answer that.
Beautiful. In alignment with yourself, your higher good, knowing what is in your own best interest.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be
Even
beautiful
when it may not,
everybody?
yeah. Well, and that's where it's hard. Like, I've learned some caveat. I've learned some things about my genetics and my body that go against the grain of culture. And so I've had to just accept that. And then I don't talk about it because it does go against the grain of culture. It's against what every guru will tell you to do to get healthier. And it's like, genetically, that is like directly opposite of what my body needs. My genetic tells me. So who am I following? I'm going to follow my own innate body intelligence because it knows. It
Yes,
knows.
it
That's
does.
what I'm going to follow.
Oh, I love that. That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. That's really important. In the whole, there's so much noise of what we should be doing, and we wear so much on our shoulders, our shoulds, right? But when you can
Yeah.
get quiet and come back to your true self, who you
Yeah.
are innately, and listen
Yeah.
to the whispers.
Yeah. And again, what's true for me may not be true for you, right? It's accepting that. And that one is a big one, that it's not everything is a black and white truth.
Yes.
What may be true for me may not be true for you. And that's okay.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yes. Oh my gosh. We could talk for hours.
I know. I remember this same feeling when we were
We could
on my
talk for
podcast.
hours. Yes. Because there's just so many like tangents that we could go off on about all of this. But I know we've been like almost an hour of enjoying this conversation. I very, very much appreciate you taking the time to be here today and to share. You did some very personal sharing, and thank you for being able to do that, and for allowing me to hold that space for you, and for the listeners to hold that space for you. And it's just another piece in the healing, isn't it?
It is. Thank you. It was an honor to be here. Thank you.
You are very, very welcome. And I have no doubt that we will connect again. So I just for the listeners, Brenda's message today, like there's just, like I said, so much in there, but about healing that mind and body and soul. And it's such inspiring work for all of us to be able to start thinking about. It's a process to start thinking, but it's a great reminder that when you're ready and you're willing to do the work, in the case of my listeners, you can do more than just survive. And really, that's what Brenda has shared, is you can do more than just survive in your life. You can thrive in your life when you have mentors and tools, and the healing starts and the love starts from within.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this takes us to the end of our episode. So I just want to invite the listeners, if they have enjoyed this episode or other episodes, to leave a review and to share this so that other people can hear the beautiful message that Brenda has shared with us today. I just want to thank you again, Brenda, for being here. And thank you to the listeners for being here. And I think that we'll just leave with a lot of beautiful messages to consider as we move forward in our thriving lives.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for being here. Have a great rest of the day.